Okay. Hello. I'm Chaos from Farbrush, or Dirk Ohlerich from 49 Games, and I'm going to talk about game development and stuff. And 10 years ago, a few seniors have decided we have two ways to do this, make games. We can either spread, go to somewhere in Europe, or we can stay in our hometown, Hamburg. And we decided we stay in our hometown. We built our own company. And we did it somewhere in the basement down there. Can you see the pictures, or should we switch off that light? Or, well, the pictures are not that important. But mainly, we started down there in the basement somewhere and founded our own company. And these are the choices you have as a senior. You can start as an individual and go to some company and make games. Or you, as seniors, always come in groups. And so it is tempting to say, okay, we have everything we need. We have code, we have graphics, we have sound, we have all the talents it takes, and start your own company. And I'm going to talk a little bit about the problems that can arise there. And especially I'm going to talk about the problems that arise if you try to make games not for PCs, but for consoles. Because for consoles, everything is quite different. Now, I think for us it worked. Now we are sitting in this office, and you see these towers there, these high houses. We didn't move far, and we can actually look out of the window and see our own birthplace, which is kind of nice. Yes. Joining the industry. Why should somebody want to create games? I think maybe because it's fun to turn a hobby into your job. That is always something that people desire, that I desired. Maybe you want to work on something which is important, and it is a great thing to see how the press reacts on your game, see how they write that your game is so great, if they write the game is great, and see that people talk about things you did. It's the same as the motivation in the demo scene, a great motivation to do it. Or maybe you want to create the game you always wanted to play. That is also a big motivation when you want to start doing games. Or maybe you want to have this creative feeling that you have in the demo scene. You want to have it in your job. You don't want to work at a bank, at accountancy, or in a web agency where you do slave work for 10 years and get nothing and pay for it. Those are all the motivations I think people have when they come to the games industry. And it is important to remember why you started doing games. What was your motivation, so that you can reflect on what happens later. This is not a photograph of our office. At first, I want to talk about the bad things that can happen in the games industry if you work as an employee. The first bad thing that often happens in the games industry is huge amount of unpaid overwork. This is so to get people doing this, they invented a new word. They called it crunch time, because it's much more fun to say, well, we did a lot of crunch time lately, than to say, well, we did a lot of unpaid overwork lately. So they came up with this word. It is pretty natural if you're working on the first game that you do this, because the first game is always the hardest game, and but you have to consider, can you do it for 10 years? I'm now in the business 10 years, doing games for 10 years, and if I would have done crunch times all the time, I would be totally dead by now. So it may be okay for your first titles to do this insane amount of work, but it won't work on long term. It also works good if the company you are working with does a fire and hire mentality, because then they can afford to burn out people because they get new people afterwards anyway. But if you want to stay in the company for a long time without extended amounts of break, you should take care that you don't work too much on the stuff. And there are actually two reasons for crunch time, two possible reasons for crunch time. One is something bad happened to project management. Some unforeseeable event came, and so the original plan doesn't work, and you just have to work yourself through it. The other reason why it happens is exploitation. Somebody just knows that, well, in the end we will do crunch time anyway. And that is a bad way to start a project. You should not be fooled by that. Another very bad thing that might happen is that you don't get a paycheck. It sometimes happens that it is delayed by 1 week, then it's delayed by 2 weeks, and later it's a whole month that's missing, and then it's 3 months that's missing. It's a poker game you are playing there, because of course there's no problem with getting it 1 week late. Maybe an inconvenience, maybe the rent blows or something. But if the cycle starts where the paychecks get later and later, then you have more and more to lose. And therefore, you have to decide for yourself, do I really want to get in the situation where I can quit, but if I quit, I also lose my, I know the project will not go to an end, and I will lose 3 months worth of payment. And so it is a very dangerous situation. Again, here there are two main reasons why a company comes in a situation where it can't pay their checks. The first reason is obviously there is no money, and there won't come any money, and therefore they have to cancel the checks. This is a very dangerous situation because, there's no, we are fucked. The other situation that might arise is a temporary lack of money, that the money will come in a month, but not now, and it will be enough money. It's a liquidity problem. And that's something which is less dangerous. It's annoying, but it is something that can be worked over. The worst thing that can happen to you is that both happens at the same time. That you have to pay in a massive amount, that you have to do massive amounts of overwork, and you don't get any pay. And then it's the moment where you have to reconsider the reasons why you started with the games industry at first place. Because if you're a really good programmer, you will find a good job everywhere. With graphicians, it's a lot more difficult, and with musicians, it's very difficult to find a job. But for a good programmer, it's not that difficult to find a job where he can work in a bigger company with regular pay and an acceptable amount of overtime. So these are the worst things that can happen to you as an employee. But if you go to the next step and say, no, I want to be an employer, I want to make my own company, even worse things can happen. The first thing is, I planned to have a long rant about lawyers, because they can really piss off your day. Most of the lawyers you will learn to know are the evil ones who want to rip you. I made a specific notice that I should not rant here too long, so I skipped that. But in the effect, there are people out there looking for companies to sue them, for any trifle they find. Oh my God, you haven't used the right footer in your email. Sue, because there's a law that you have to have the right footer in the email. Or you make a photograph from a street and put it in your game, and then comes the lawyer of the architect and says, that's my house, I designed that house. You infringed my copyright. And then there comes, what is it? Oh yes, you make a job application. In Germany we have distinct forms for male and female people. So if I write, wir suchen einen Programmierer, a programmer, then I get sued, because I should have written a programmer or a female programmer. There's a very new specific law against that, as if I have a problem with the gender of my programmer. But no, in Germany, it's very evil, not to mention the female ones. You get a completely new dimension of spam. You get mails saying, very officially looking mails saying, please pay this fee for getting into the official blah registry. And they send this to every company in their register, and some say, oh damn, another fee, and then they get money. And so you have to find out which are the registries you really have to pay, and which one are the registries which just, well, maybe we make a mistake. This changed the whole way you think. You get paranoid. You get, can I really use the name of the city in my games, or will the city sue me for that, or any kind of stuff. You go around and see copyright infringements. You see law penalties, like we had the problem in Germany. If you sell drinks, the cheapest drink must not be an alcoholic drink. It must be a non-alcoholic. A very sensible law, so that people don't get drunk because they are too poor. But you don't want to have lawyers running around making notice, a photograph, and then sue for that. That's not. Oh, okay. Anyway, this is one thing that happens to you. You see the world with different eyes. Another important thing. Oh, of course, you need professional aid. No normal person can write a paycheck. It's an art in Germany, at least. There's so many regulations combined to writing paychecks that you have to hire a company who specializes on that. They do most paychecks in Germany because they are the only ones who have the software who knows all the laws. You need a tax counselor, of course, and all the stuff. Another very important thing is you need to know which form of company you want to found. In Germany, there are two major forms of company, and I think in every other country it's the same. This is GBR, Gesellschaft bürgerlichen Rechts, which is the company you have by default. When you get together and buy a plane ticket, you have informally already, if two people buy a plane ticket together, they have informally formed this kind of society, corporation. And this is a very unpleasant corporation because every single partner has to pay for everything if something goes wrong. Imagine you have your 10,000 euros late and you say, okay, we are two people, one pays 5,000, the other pays 5,000. Now it happens that your colleague has no money because he's bankrupt, then you have to pay the whole 10,000. There's no insurance for that, and it can be 100,000. And it can be because some damn lawyer found out that you did something very evil, like making a photograph of a church. So you are in a very insecure position as soon as you have formed a company. The other form is the GmbH, the limited company, which is a lot better, and you need a little bit of money to do that, but actually it's not that expensive. Most of the money is not lost, only put into an account. So you have to have it, but it's not gone. Only some fees are gone, a few thousand euros. So that's the, when you do a corporation, you have to look exactly what form of corporation you do, company you do. And the most important thing is that you need to trust your partners. As soon as money is involved in the whole thing, friendships can break very easily. And you are you can argue with your partners, and it's important to argue with your partners. But it is lethal to fight with your partners, because that will end in disaster for everyone in the company. The biggest problem when Sinas found a company is finding a manager, because managing a company is a full-time job. You have to find a publishing contract, because most likely you don't have the money to develop a game on your own. You need to find somebody who gives you the money. You you have to understand the clauses in the contract, which is very difficult. You have to understand which publishing clauses are rip-off and which publishing clauses are legitimate, although they look like a rip-off. It's just the way the business is, and you have to live with it, because you will not get around these clauses. You have to know what are the differences there. You need to plan and control your cash flow. It is not enough to have enough money to finish the project. You need to have enough money during the whole process at every point of time to finish the project. Otherwise, you will have this problem not paying paychecks and stuff. It is a full-time job to manage a company, and it's not something like a lead programmer can do in his spare time. And when a team of seniors tries to make the step and build a company, they have this problem finding the right person. Which one of them is dispensable to care only about this management stuff, which nobody of us really likes. So that's something. Well, where do you get invest? Pick your own. You have to pick one of your team and elect him, and don't expect him to do anything else but management then. Another thing is find a friend. Maybe you know somebody who has no idea about programming, about music or graphics, but he has all the skills you need and you know him for years and can't trust him, because that's the most important thing. And the third way, just pick a stranger. That's road to disaster. So much about all this management stuff. I think, what's my next thing? Yeah, we now move forward to console games, which is a lot more interesting, at least to me, because it's something that I really do. I don't do the management stuff. We picked choice number 2, find a person you trust that who has no idea of programming. Very sensible thing to do, I think. What is a console? For me, I say console is everything you connect to a TV set. So when I'm talking about consoles, I'm not talking about handheld devices like Nintendo DS or PSP or things. I have never programmed for those, so I can't tell a lot about. Although I think some things are very similar compared to the consoles. There are 2 main problems when doing console games. The first main problem is production issues, and the second is technical problems. I will start with the production issues. You see, the main difference is, of course, that you can't just start programming for, let's say, PlayStation, because Sony will want to, you need a license by the platform licensee, like Sony, Microsoft, or Nintendo. They give you these numbers that you say you are a licensed developer, and that's your number for the game. And so without direct contact to the licensee, to the licensor, you can't do anything. Why? Here. So the production flow for a console game differs from the production flow for a PC game. Let's imagine it starts with a project start. You make a contract, you make concepts. That's normal. Some you have then the publishing contract. That's normal if you have one. And then you need something new. You need some kind of concept approval. You will need to send your concept to the licensor. And then he looks at the concept and says, okay, that is a game they can imagine for their platform. So they make a selection what they want on their platform. They look at your company, if you have if you are looking like a healthy company, and then you can make the game. After you've got a concept approval, you will be getting a development kit, a modified machine for producing on the platform. Yeah, that is basically what you need to start actual programming. Then you do your production, and then there will be in the middle of the production there will be something, well, with many of the licensees. The actual what is it called? The actual procedure differs from Microsoft to Sony to Nintendo. It's always very similar, but then there is some kind of, they look at the game in the middle of the production and then tell if it meets the accepted quality standards. So there's a chance that in the middle of production, people tell you to, well, you should add that and that feature to your game to meet our standards. And then it might happen that the requested changes are not in your budget. And that's your problem. You have to make the changes that are demanded and somehow find a way to increase the budget to really make these changes. After that, you go on with an alpha and a beta, and then comes something very different. You can't, when you say, okay, this is my release candidate, this is the game I want to put in the shops, into the shelves, then you need to send this release candidate to the licensor, and then the licensor will do a last gold master test. This can take weeks, and they have very good testers. And if they find a bug that is reproducible, then they won't allow that the thing goes into the shops. They just say, fix the bug and come again later. So you are actually forced to create working software, which is something which is very uncommon in the games industry today. But for consoles, there's a quality check which you have no influence at all to. So you have to send a working game, and if they say no, it's no. You can't negotiate or something. Maybe you can negotiate on trifles, but if the game simply crashes or isn't solvable, you can't say, oh, we make a patch later. By the time it's in the shelves, our programmers will have surely solved the issue. That's the way you cannot go with consoles. And it also affects your street date. You have to plan, you just can't say, this is our Goldmaster date, and then 2 weeks later it's in the shop. You have to plan a few weeks for the approval phase, and then you have to plan and that you might fail, especially when you do your first game, it's very likely to fail. And then do we need 2 or 3 approvals? You have to plan for that so that the street date moves far into the future from your Goldmaster date. There was a
Well, it has almost already been answered, but still, I mean, how hard is it in reality, like to get licensed? I mean, of course, I think there are quite many pretty crappy games out there, but still, how hard is it to really get licensed? For example,
usually, let's say, put it this way: if we want to make a license on PlayStation 3, Xbox 360, or Wii, then it's hard because those are the top products of the companies. If you want to use one of the older products, it gets a lot easier. And if you have made many games in the past, things get a little bit sloppy. These horrible games that you mentioned have never had a concept approval. But be sure that if you want to make your first game, you will have to, especially when you maybe come from Germany or something, nobody knows you, then you have a big problem. Not a big problem, but you have to plan for the problems that arise. You will have to go through the approval process. There may be some disturbance in the middle of the project because of demands from the licensor. So you have to plan for this. It can be very difficult, especially if the project is small. If you're making a game with, let's say, 10 million euros, it's no problem. I don't have 10 million euros. I think this whole procedure is a big problem for many companies to get into this console cycle. And the only way to know about it is actually to do it. So this is one of the reasons why I'm doing all this talk, which I'm actually not doing for the first time. Yes, but where have I been? Yeah, okay, the dev kits. Where do I get the dev kit? Officially, you get the dev kit when you got some kind of legal form with the licensor. Let's say that if you get the concept approval, you can get the dev kit. But the dev kits are pretty expensive. So the alternatives to getting dev kits is look at eBay. Although it is totally forbidden to sell development kits, sometimes a company goes Chapter 11, goes bankrupt. And then the people who rip the company apart just don't care about anything and sell everything at eBay. And then it's your chance to snap these things and get your own dev kit. It's of course, this won't happen with a PS3, but it might happen with older things. So that's a way to get a dev kit unofficially. Another way is to use mod chips, of course, but that's very limited with the current generation with PS3 and stuff. But maybe we'll come into a situation where mod chips work, and then everything will be a lot cheaper. Since dev kits are expensive and dev kits are always a little bit limited, especially if the platform is new, we at 49 Games, this is a dev kit. It's taken from a Sony webpage. It's this big box, extremely loud and noisy. Anyway, I wanted to have this thing. What we try to do is do most of the work with cross-platform development, so that most of the programmers, all of the artists can work on a PC, and then we try to connect the PlayStation with some kind of the controller with some kind of adapter to the PC, so that we can play the game with the original controller on the PC. And only those programmers who actually work on optimization issues and engine issues or specific stuff like memory card access, network access, have to work on the limited amount of dev kits. For the next generation platforms, we have the PS3 controller. It's kind of bitchy. We have not yet found a way to connect it completely to a PC because of the 6-axis feature. But the Wii is very easy to connect to a PC, and for Xbox 360 is actually supposed by Microsoft. They have made an extra library to allow you to use that controller on PC. Well, so much for management problems, getting to dev kits. Now I'm coming to a little bit more technical problems. What is the biggest problem when people try to program on consoles? And I have been asked sometimes to port a game from PC to console, and this reason is always the reason why I said, no, this won't work. And in every single case I have been right, these games never appeared on the market. So they were actually not transportable, not convertible, except for a complete rewrite. The reason is, of course, memory. All these consoles have very little memory. Even the modern ones don't have much memory. These numbers come directly from Wikipedia, so they are not official and not complete, but they give a picture. If you imagine you're having a PC with 512 megabytes of RAM and nothing in the graphics card to augment that, then you are in trouble. The next problem, this is usually my best line, but I think here in the demo scene audience, it's not such a big line because you should be all aware of the problem. On a console, there's no virtual memory. That means on a PC, if you need more memory than physically available, the hard disk will spin up, things will get a little bit slower, and everything's fine. On a console, there may even be no hard disk to spin up. On all platforms, there's no virtual memory. If you need 1 byte more than it's physically available, the whole game will crash. And I already told that a game crashing is not a minor disturbance, but it's a real problem on console development. So this is one problem. Most people who study computer science today only learn, well, we use Java and there's a garbage collector and he does all the work for us. And this is unfortunately absolutely untrue for console development. You even if you say, okay, we have new and delete, and all the remaining work is done by the system, even that's untrue for consoles, because you have some big problems with that alone. You have to use the whole instrumentary of memory management options that are available to a programmer. There are, I think, 6 ways to manage memory, which are useful in this kind of situation. Let me explain some of the problems you can find. First of all, memory leaks are absolutely lethal. If small amounts of memory disappear from time to time, on such a system, very soon this game will crash. Another thing is the fragmentation problem. This is maybe known to Amiga programmers, that if you allocate memory and free memory in different orders, sometimes you still have the memory you need, but you don't have it in one chunk. And then the game crashes, because if you play level A, level B, level C, everything is okay. But if you play level B, level A, level C will not load, because the memory chunk available is split in 2 parts, and you can't get it in one part. Another nice trick is, let's imagine you make a game with a car racing game for players, and you have to check, of course, the maximum amount of players in the largest level, with a car with the most number of polygons, with the heaviest rain, so that the biggest number of particles is splashing on the screen. That you have to test so that you can be sure that you have enough memory for the game to compute. Now let's imagine you have rain and snow means the double amount of polygons and the rain. You have to tell that to your test team so that they know, okay, when we are checking for memory, we better check snow and not rain. Or you have a very, very intelligent programmer who says, okay, we have to be careful with memory. So I program it in a way that if we have only one car, I only need the memory for one car. And if we have 4 cars, I allocate the memory for 4 cars. Very good way to introduce no bugs, because the game has to work with 4 cars too. So no memory is actually saved by using only one car in the cases. You have to, these all are problems that apply to every programmer in the team. It's not that there's some magical middleware that solves all the problems. Actually, middleware costs memory, it doesn't save memory. Every single programmer in the team has to know the restrictions of the platform for which they are programming. And that's the problem why it's so hard to convert something from PC to a console, because most of the PC programmers would be totally crazy if they would program in a memory-efficient console style. It would be inefficient on a PC. It would be a waste of manpower to make a PC game in the way you need to make a console game. But on the console, you have no other way than to obey these rules. So it's a lot easier to port from console to PC than the other way around. I'm very proud to the fact that we have released games on PlayStation 2 with 50 kilobytes of free memory on a 32 megabyte machine. So it can be done to really squeeze the last drop out of the machine if you have a careful memory management. But that's not the only thing that makes programming on consoles different. The architecture is obscure. Fortunately, with the cell processor, everything about this, or almost everything about this processor, is freely available on the IBM page. So if you want to know how the cell really feels, go to the IBM page and grab all the papers, instruction set listings and stuff. And it's a lot of paper. It's a very complicated chip, but the basic facts are pretty simple. And the problem with these custom architecture, be it cell, be it all the other processors that are built into consoles, is that a PC architecture is designed to run old code efficiently. When you're buying a new processor, you expect your old programs to become faster. But on a console, you can't buy the old programs. Or okay, a PlayStation 2 game is no problem for a PlayStation 3, so that doesn't matter. These consoles are designed to be inexpensive yet powerful. So they are not as forgiving to programming mistakes, because as a programmer, you are supposed to make no mistakes. These consoles will never see old code. They will only see new code, which is hand-tailored for the architecture. And if you use the architecture correctly, you can get incredible performance out of it. But this doesn't happen for free. Many of these problems are becoming more and more important for PCs too. For instance, multi-core programming, multiprocessing, parallel programming. All these issues don't come for free. We don't have the magical compiler where you just switch the multiprocessor flag on and everything is fine. You have to do that by hand. Another thing, vectorization. It also doesn't come for free. No matter how much effort the compiler builders have made to make it automatic, there's still a lot of handwork to do so that the compilers can actually have a chance to generate efficient code. Assembler is, of course, not a good idea. Such an SPE has 128 registers. And each command has a latency, each interesting command, like a multiply or something, has a latency of 7 cycles. So you can imagine yourself a loop in your head with 128 registers in use. You better use a compiler for that. Another problem is in a game, it is easy to optimize things like a 3D engine or a physics engine, because these parts of your code usually have tight loops, and most of your time is spent in these tight loops. You have a few pages on the screen, and you know, if I put a few weeks into optimizing these few pages, my game will get really fast. But the part of the game is not these loops, it's just a huge amount, tons and tons of lines of gameplay, of artificial intelligence, of stuff that is not a loop, of stuff that is just a lot of code. And if you imagine that you need to optimize this lot of code by factor 2, you're pretty much lost, because you won't have the time to go through all this code and make optimizations. So your chances are limited. Again, middleware, you can buy good 3D engines, you can buy good physics engines, but if your game is not a first-person shooter or something that you can buy off the shelf, you will have to do a lot of work on your own. The last thing I want to do here is want to give you a glimpse into how deep the programming on a console gets. On a PC, you have usually the CPU issues something like DirectX or OpenGL calls, and then the driver translates these OpenGL and DirectX calls into GPU-specific commands, because you don't know which graphic cards there is. On a console, you can be absolutely sure what graphic cards you have. So the API is very GPU-specific. The layer between the hardware and you is extraordinarily thin. It's so thin you can look through it. Sometimes you only have to look into the headers, and then you see everything which is done on hardware level. Sometimes this is even documented with explicit registers. This bit does this, and this bit does that. So you can go very deep into the hardware. And you actually need to go very deep into the hardware, because on a console, because this console hardware is not so forgiving, unoptimized code is a lot worse than on PC. The difference between optimized and unoptimized code is a lot wider. Most of the details are, of course, NDA'd, so I can't talk about it. But where is it? Sony was so friendly to put a very interesting document on their web page. This is how far have we got? Sony has, in this, I can talk about it because it's official. In their development kits, they have a special hardware which gathers around 100 signals from the processor pins at every clock cycle. And with this information, they build like these huge graphs. And then you can zoom into these graphs. This is something like 10 clock cycles, or you can zoom even further. But this is enough. You can see the green things is the CPU is actually computing an instruction. And you see it doesn't do this a lot. You can see the headline, low performance. Why? Because of cache misses and cache write-backs. And sometimes the graphics chip will also want to have a little bit of data from the bus. So in this example, you see the CPU making a few commands and then waiting a little bit on the bus, and then again a few commands and waiting a little bit. I will not blame the developer of this game for doing it, because this is what you will have in your game, because you don't have the time to optimize everything out. But if you can locate a loop and make it great, this is PlayStation 2, by the way, your code can look like something like this. You see that the CPU is very green. It's doing a lot of calculations. You see only very little cache misses, and then you question yourself, wait a moment, it's doing a lot of computation but no memory access at all. What is it doing? Spinning thumbs or what? These are direct memory access, DMAs, into and out of the CPU. So all the access to the main memory is done with DMA. And the DMA runs in parallel to the CPU. The CPU is double buffered. So some programmers spent a lot of time optimizing all this out. And this is really what you do when you write console games and have a performance problem. You really can go that deep into the pipeline. And I said this is PlayStation 2, but if you look at the cell architecture from PlayStation 3, it's very similar. Because you also have lots of DMAs and lots of independent processing units where you can do all these stunts. Well, this concludes the talk, almost. Haha. No. Better. Yes. I'm ready for questions.
The highest level programming language you will use for this is C++, or?
The highest level, my highest level is C++, but it is also known that certain scripting languages can be used on consoles. So scripting languages sometimes, C++, most of it. Assembler, as little as possible.
Is the expectation for getting a license increasing as time passes? For example, PlayStations change very rarely. So is the expectations increasing as the developers improve, like the Commodore C64 scene?
Well, if you are applying as a company for a license, surely the older the license gets, the easier it gets to get a license from the licensor. Because at the beginning it is very hard, there are only very few dev kits, marketing is very critical, they only want the best and most expensive projects to be done, but as the platform ages, then usually there comes a phase where it gets a lot easier to get into it, because they want to have a full spectrum of stuff. I don't understood the reference to 64. Oh yes, of course. That's I forgot to mention that's the biggest fun about doing console games is, of course, that the hardware doesn't change, that you program it on one PlayStation and it works everywhere. That is very similar. Also, when you are in the launch title area, very early on the hardware, very little is known about the hardware. You have to invent everything by yourself. When you're working for a platform which is there for 3 years or so, you can go on the closed developer net and find all the coolest tricks which other people invented. And also, tools are getting better. For instance, Sony has shown some incredible tools for PlayStation 3 development and GDC. And that was not available for the first generation programmers on that platform.
Being the support of online capabilities on new consoles like PC3s or Xbox 360 more wide compared to the older consoles, is the probable easier because you can patch like in PC later your game?
I haven't really understood that.
Okay. Actually, now most of the consoles have online patches before the game, after the game is released. Like in Xbox 360, there have been a lot of patches to certain games to get around bugs.
I still don't understand.
Okay, I'll try. There has been certain games on the 360 that have certain problems when they were on stores and were fixed after.
Do you mean bug fixes? Patches?
Yeah. Patches. So
things got a little bit with the current generation. You always have the internet connectivity, so bug fixing is getting more possible. Still, I don't expect, or I hope, I really hope that the quality control at the console licensors doesn't get sloppy, because now we can make patches. because I hate patches. As a game developer, when a game is finished, I want to move on and not make maintenance for the next 2 years. But I think in the launch phase, all kinds of mistakes happen.
The PlayStation 2, well, I heard it's the graphics hardware was a bitch to program to. Is that true?
I'm in no position to know.
All right.
Actually, it's kind of fun.
Well,
the PlayStation 2 hardware is there's a little glitch there, but otherwise it seems pretty perfect. You must imagine when it was built, it's now pretty old. When it was new, it has really good performance figures. Today, of course, it doesn't have, but then how cheap it is today. How they managed to squeeze this big box into such a tiny thing. So it is, of course, it's a little bit cheap, but the thing that I don't like about programming PlayStation 2 is that you have all these possibilities to improve the performance, to make it faster, to make it cooler, and then it's still so much slower than an ordinary PC. So while the hardware was really cool when it was built, today it's a little bit outdated, and I can't see myself putting months and months of optimization work into getting a performance which is compared to a GeForce 7 ridiculous. That's the really bitchy part that I see in it. So that's the reason why I wouldn't do a PlayStation 2 demo or something, because I have better things to do with my time than optimizing for this old platform and not getting money for it. It's not for beginners, of course.
For the new generation, is the graphics API, the graphics hardware, a bit more similar to the PC, or is it still very different?
I'm in no position to tell.
Any other questions? Non-NDA violating questions?
Yes, 49 is the prefix of Germany in the 0049, that's Germany. It's not that we stop after 49 games, but that would give us a few years to go. But I think our 49th game will got something special.